Hello and welcome to Scientific Tarot, another episode. Today I'm going to do a short deck review on a new deck that I just got as a gift. It's called the Tarot of Druids from Lo Scarabeo. First thing I like to say is that it's a mini deck, or maybe even a micro deck. You could actually palm it if you wanted to. That makes it very convenient to travel with, put in your pocket, pull it out at a party, whatever. It's really nice. It's the only mini deck that I own, and I like that aspect of it. Another thing I'd like to say about it is that the cardstock is really good quality. It's got the right slip to the surface. It's got perfect stiffness for shuffling. And it's just really got a nice feel to it. So that part of it I really like. And then another thing that I'd like to say about it is that it has a reversible back, so that if you were inclined to do reverse readings, that option is available. I've been using this for some daily readings and a couple of other small readings just to get a feel for how it works. And this is not going to be like a card-by-card review to show the artwork so much as to explain more my experience with the deck and how the readings have gone and what I like and what I'm not really thrilled about with it. So, the first comment I'll make is that the artwork is a little bit cartoonish, but actually very appealing, as you can see. And I'll show a few cards. Just to get a feel for the type of artwork. Although there is another review out there that clearly shows all the artwork, but it doesn't discuss so much the use of the deck. So I'm going to focus more on that aspect of it. The deck comes with a very little white book, which comes in handy if you need to look something up. One thing that's different about this deck is that it is built on the Celtic pantheon, and there are not direct correspondences between these cards and the Rider-Waite or some of the other more popular decks. So, for example, let's pull one here. Three. The Empress is Morrigan. Okay, you could make an argument that that would be a pretty good correspondence, and there's, again, I'll go through the explanation here. What do they say about Morrigan? Female goddess of war, procreative force. Okay, so in some sense that matches, in another sense it doesn't really. Let's pull another one here. The Two of Pentacles. This shows two senior men with orbs, and the pentacles are like an egg-shaped stone in this deck. They're passing each other on the road, and, you know, okay, maybe. Let's see what else we got. The Priestess is Brig. Let's see what the book has to say about her. Goddess who inspires the arts and crafts. Force of Eros. Okay, that's a reasonable correspondence. Let's look at some of the other minor cards. The Four of Cups. Okay. This one shows senior man, maybe a teacher of some sorts with 4 little children around him, giving some kind of lesson. What does it say in the book? 4 of Cups. And they call them chalices in this deck. New awareness and lucidity. I don't know. For me, more the 4 is more of like a resting point in the emotions where you kind of step back from things and maybe what you want is in front of you, but you're not ready to take it. I don't quite see the correspondence there. 3 of Cups. Certainly you see some men hanging around a table with a server bringing some kind of drink. They've got a musician. They're having a good time. Okay, that's a good correspondence there. Ten. The Wheel. Bode. Goddess of Battle, Changes, Revelations. Again, it's a real stretch for me to see a Wheel of Fortune in that card anywhere. Okay. So, the artwork is nice. It's well done. It's got detail in it. But here's been my experience with reading it. Because the correspondences are not one-to-one with the standard deck that you might be used to, and because in a lot of cases the correspondence between the artwork and the card and the description in the little white book are not exactly matching or a bit of a stretch as well, you can't just pick up this deck having had experience with a Rider-Waite or, for example, a Tarot Illuminati or something like that, or a Thoth deck. You can't just pick this up, lay out a spread, and expect it to talk to you right away. You might need to do a little bit of study on who these characters are, what their attributes are, and you kind of have to make a decision when you pull, say, a minor arcana card. Do I go with the traditional meaning? Do I go with the meaning that's in the little white book? Or do I read the artwork and forget all that I've traditionally learned in the standard system and go on intuition? And I've done a lot of 3-card daily reading type things just to get practice with this deck. And I found that last approach seems to be the best one. So, for example, I'm gonna do a quick draw here, just to see how it comes out. And basically what I found is that, like, sometimes the correspondence is very similar, and it's not a big deal. You just read it as if you were reading any other deck. Other times it's not exactly the same, but because of the artwork or because of how the cards are showing up, it's pretty clear what the message is. And then there have been a couple of instances where I pulled a 3-card reading, and honestly, I was just stumped. And I'm not going to say I'm an expert reader. I've not been doing this my whole life, and it's not a full-time profession. But it's pretty rare that I pull a spread and I can't see what it's trying to tell me. And that has happened on a couple occasions with these cards where I drew 3 cards, looked at it, and I was just like, you know what, I need to sit on this for a bit because I couldn't tell what it was saying. So let's pull a sample reading here and see what it says. So what might be showing up today that we need to be aware of that we wouldn't know if we didn't look at these cards. So I get the Knave of Swords, and again the Knave is the page, the Knight of Swords, and the 7 of Pentacles. So we have 2 swords and a pentacles, 2 face cards. The knave of swords, that would be like a messenger. This is an odd sort of thing. I've never drawn this card before, so we're really winging it here. This is a man who appears to be laid in a grave. And there's a young boy who's attending him as if there's going to be... He's either being dug up or he's being buried. So we've got that. And then we've got the Knight of Swords. Again, that's a knight on a horse, and there's a sword stuck in a tree, which kind of references the Arthur myth, but it's in a tree, it's not in a stone. But generally you can take the message of the Knight of Swords is someone who is intelligent and sharp in the mind, comes up with a lot of good ideas, doesn't always stick with them. He's on a horse, so he's moving, so he goes from one thing to another. But he's a good guy to have, like, brainstorming, that kind of thing. And then we have the 7 of Pentacles. This one is showing a young woman, probably a recent mother there, with a very small child holding this pentacle. It's the egg-shaped rock in a crib. And she looks a bit astonished or a bit worried that this child has this thing in its hands. Whether maybe she's afraid he's going to drop it, or she didn't know where it was and now it showed up there. And again, the 7 of Pentacles is usually either I planted some things and now I'm having to wait for them to come back to me, or in the Thoth deck it's a little more negative in that I planted some things and they didn't turn out the way I thought they were going to turn out. I don't see that in this card. Unless you want to say that maybe the child is the thing you planted and you're waiting for that to grow up, which is reasonable, but I don't tie that in with the astonished look on her face. So it's not a really strong correspondence there, but I'm going to go with just like I'm going to go on the artwork here. And again, with the 3 card, I don't usually assign an order to the reading. I just look at the 3 and see where it goes. So you've got the Knight and the Knave of Swords. So it's definitely in the mind. You've got some kind of message. And again, this one I would consider one of those that I'm a little bit stumped on. So let's see. What's the message here? The sword is sharp. It's got a nice twinkle on it. It's very bright. You know, this is one where, again, I would just have to sit on it. It's tricky. But let's not give up here. Let's not give up despite the impulse to do so. The 7 of Pentacles, the Knight of Swords, and the Knave of Swords. So there's a sharp mind. The sword is in the tree, so it's like it's a potential, but it hasn't been realized. The child is young and has this orb in his hands. So let's just say that the mother has found some kind of surprise in that this child has this orb in its hands, and that's not what she was expecting. And the message is that he is going to be very intelligent, and because of the orb, he's also going to be materially successful. But that's going to require some study and discipline in order to pull that sword out of the tree and make it useful. So you can see that, that one was a little tricky. In one sense, I wouldn't want to be caught short in a reading that I was doing for someone, lay out a spread of cards, and be stumped. It would be a bit uncomfortable. And, usually my go-to is the Thoth deck, or Robin Wood, or Tarot Illuminati, occasionally the Rider-Waite, and that almost never happens with those. You lay out 3 cards or 10 cards, there's always a story. With these, in one sense I'd be a little nervous taking these out like at a psychic fair and trying to read cold like this. In another sense, the challenge of this deck is to perhaps take a step back, look at the artwork, read on in the book on the topic of the particular deity involved, and try to solve the puzzle. And that's how I approach these daily readings that I have been doing with these cards. Is I'll get up in the morning before work, pull the 3 cards, look at them. Sometimes they speak right away, it's simple, I got it. Other times like this, it's a little bit tricky, and I'll take a picture of the reading, I'll go to work, I'll sit on it for an hour, do a few things, come back to it and think, okay, now I see how that might sort of lay out that little puzzle that I have. So overall, I'd say this deck is a very nice addition to have to my collection. For me, right now, and your experience may differ, you may be totally drawn to the Celtic mythos, you may identify with the deities involved here, you just have to play with it and see. It's not a deck that I would pull out at a psychic fair and do a cold reading on someone and try to figure out exactly what the meaning is. I might be pushing my abilities if I were to do that. But I might be inclined to take it out at a party that was an informal setting and there was no exchange being involved and it was just for fun, or if someone came over to the house and if they were from that part of the world, I certainly would, pull this deck out and use it. If they had an interest in that sort of thing, I certainly would take the deck out and use it. And, it might be a challenging reading and it might take a little bit more time to figure out exactly what they're trying to say. It's always there. The meaning is always there. It's just a little bit harder to dig it out. And again, the artwork is a bit cartoonish. It's very cute. But there's enough detail and enough artwork in there and enough symbolism that there's always something to find in there. You just have to look for it and figure out how that fits in with the meaning of the card. So again, I'm glad I have this deck. I've used it. I will continue to use it for daily card readings. I find it intriguing, puzzling, challenging, and again, I'm the kind of person who's not here to take the lazy man's path through life. So something like this I find interesting. So if you're called to use a deck like this, then by all means pick it up, play with it, and see how it works for you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.